This video is dedicated to immigrants, undocumented immigrants, but it's also for everyone else as well. First, I'm going to talk about what the right wing is doing wrong, what this country is doing wrong, really. Then I'm going to talk about what immigrants are doing wrong, and it should be easy to see what we need to do to correct this. Everyone needs to rally for my region argument plan, the healthcare analysis plan, the war on poverty plan, the global farming program plan, which would also reduce immigration. And it's in everyone's best interest to do so because people don't understand how to deal with this problem. And obviously, to make the world a better place is in everyone's best interest. So first of all, let's understand why this is happening. Why are they deporting people? Well, it goes back to the motivating force, the driving force of America. So write down that phrase, the motivating force of America. Also write down the phrase, the driving force of America. So what are they motivated by? Well, we got to go back in history and say, let's go back to about 1920 with the Second Klan, which was started by William Joseph Simmons, who was a member of over 24 fraternities. Many of those fraternities, or at least some of them, are still around to this day. The Second Klan around the 1920s had anywhere from about 4 to 6 million members, right? There's different kind of estimates out there. There were also other organizations that worked with them. And some people on YouTube have highlighted some of those organizations. And one of them had like 500,000 members. So there were these large racist organizations in America. Now, why did they exist? This part is very key. People often think about them burning crosses. They think about them lynching people, shooting people, maybe raping people. They think about these things that they did, with some frequency. But what was motivating? Why were they formed? People often make the mistake of saying, well, it was just some Confederate generals. They were mad about the Civil War. With Nathan Bedford Forrest, they came together and formed the Klan. Yeah, that's a part of it. That is a part of it. The word Klan, and keep in mind they dealt in wordplay. Look up Klan K words. Ayak, right? Was a play on words for are you a Klansman? They had K words. Wordplay. And they were started by the Freemasons. Nathan Bedford Forrest was a Freemason. And the Freemasons were concerned with the direction of society. In fact, when Lincoln ran, before the Klan was even formed, he said he did not want to be a Freemason because he didn't want people to think that he won the presidency because he was a Mason, because things that were important basically didn't happen without the Masons allowing them to. That's how deep that goes. And then after the Civil War, right, in the late, in the 1860s, the Klan starts to be formed. And also eugenics, right? What do you do with society, right? Eugenics was coined. The Klan is formed. And they proceed with terrorizing people, and they rise to a higher level of power in the 1920s, which is after World War I and around the time Hitler is rising to power across the world in Germany. Now, you have to connect these dots here. They're very important. But if you forget that, at least don't forget this. That when the millions of members of the Klan in the 1920s dispersed because of what had happened to a person named Oberholzer, who was raped by a very powerful political figure who was a Klansman on a train. And he was biting her, and it was a very horrific and brutal rape. People no longer wanted to be associated with that because they liked to pretend that they were knights in shining armor, white knights fighting for the white race. And so they left the Klan but maintained their motivating force, their driving force. And they were already in other fraternities. Some of them joined other fraternities. They're in various groupings. They were inclined. They were clannish, right? They were clannish. And doing things in a clandestine or surreptitious or secretive way, a covert way. Clandestine. And so they were still collaborating as groups. And we see that the civil rights acts don't occur until the 60s, right? For example, 64, 65, Martin Luther King is killed in 68, not too long ago. So it's more than just Republicans, though. This is what people don't get. Fraternities have membership in both parties historically. In fact, both parties used to be one party. It used to be called the Democratic Republican Party. Look it up. There was the Federalist Party and the Whig Party, right? People wearing wigs who control things in state government as federal government. So you have the Whig Party, the Federalist Party, and the Democratic Republican Party. Going back to the wordplay. And so, now I'm making this a little bit more kind of informative than I intended, but this stuff is all important. The bottom line is that the driving force of America and the driving force of the Klan are the same in terms of on a governing class level, managerial class level, government level, corporate level. Now, why are they the same? Because the governing class formed the Klan to maintain white social orders. Who did they kill? They killed political dissidents. Who did they kill? They killed businessmen who were making lots of money, who were a threat to the status quo, the existing state of affairs, and the social orders. Some people said that the Klan was formed to keep blacks out of Freemasonry. Not exactly. They were formed to keep blacks from collaborating with Freemasons who, it kind of caused me to slip on my words there. I'm not a Freemason. But to keep blacks from collaborating with Freemasons who were part of the process of social engineering, designing society, urban development, city planning. They didn't want them to kind of work the angles and to find a way to escape the fanatic social control of, whites and Jews and LGBT people who were known to abuse them, right? There's something called buck breaking where gays would rape black slaves and turn them out. And a lot of those people became Freemasons. They became Prince Hall Masons and other Masons. So that's why the Masons have a sort of gay way about them. It's because part of it is LGBT supremacy. So let's just wrap this up here. Okay, I don't want to make this video too long. So what then happens is that these fraternities and these corporations and these political groups, they continue with the same driving force, the same motivational force, their purpose, what they believe is going on, right? What they believe should happen, their manifest destiny mentality, expansionism, they want to expand their philosophy and their control, continentalism, they want to take over every continent, what have you. So they want to manifest their white, Jewish, and LGBT supremacist agenda. And you say, well, how do you know it's Jews? Because it's always been a Judeo-Christian culture, and they were plantation owners, and they were wealthy businessmen, what have you. And you can see these people who kind of overlap with the two, Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, okay? And if you look at what the Jews are saying about American history and their part, it lines right up with this perfectly. That's what's going on. So when that is occurring, they spread their philosophy throughout the continent into Mexico and into South America, into another continent as well, and Central America, what have you, all over the world, Africa, India. That's what colonialism was about, right? It's about expanding white supremacy, Jewish supremacy, and LGBT supremacy. And so they play a sort of game, and they send these cults and these cartel cults who have a lot of power in Mexico. And people who may not be in cartels, who are into politics, who are collaborating with cartels and the CIA, okay? And they give them their religions. And there's their Western religions, right? The cult of Santa Maria, the Santeria, kind of Catholic and witchcraft cults, and on and on and on. There's a bunch of this kind of stuff there. Jewish mysticism in the form of crypto Jew Hispanic cults that are designed to uphold the at least somewhat crypto-Jew European governing class, and to kind of create a structure where certain people are demonized and certain people are seen as, the heroes with the muskets and the wigs to save the day. But the wig itself is a symbol of being insane. It's a symbol of disassociation, where they pretend that there's something they're not when they put on this elaborate wig and get all dressed up and say, yes, we're important. It's a symbol of insanity, of what they call ritual madness. Write this down. Dionysus is said to be a young Zeus. He's a deity of ritual madness, religious ecstasy, theater arts. Again, theater arts. Think about classical music. Think about the theater. Think about the wigs and how they come together. So to make a long story short, it is because of the motivating force of America that this is happening this way. And they want sexual control, they want financial control, and they want people to suffer because they have bred a predatorial instinct into themselves. The Romans with their Colosseum and their bloodbath wars, stabbing each other in the back, killing Caesar, their wars for power. And as they kill each other, they look at the poor people and say, hey, there's a pecking order here. So they believe that the poor have to suffer more. Even the word Rome is a play on words for more. They say more money, more power. This is why they used to say to the slaves, they're uppity, because they thought that they were above, up and above, and going up instead of going down. So they said, this guy's acting like someone who is led by a moral force against the motivational force of America. Now, there's two Americas. One is the America that says you have constitutional rights and freedom, that they have completely turned their backs on the whole time. Less than 2% of Americans are said to have fought in the Revolutionary War, and not all of them were good. In fact, logically, probably none of them were good guys. They just were mad at the other bad guys. So either you're somebody on what the Bible would say is the narrow path, who's trying with all your heart to be good, or you've disassociated and you've come into a compartment that these people are using to make their game come together a certain way. Thus, in Proverbs 1, it says, Proverbs is a book in the Bible to understand the parables, the riddles, and the sayings of the wise. And why is it a riddle in the first place? Because Baal is a deity of confusion. The Bible is by Baal. It's right there in Isaiah. It's right there in Proverbs, where it says sin is not ended by multiplying words. In Isaiah, it says, and it's quoted by Christ in the New Testament, it says, God has blinded them, or otherwise they would turn and be healed. He's blinded them because they keep sinning, so he keeps blinding them. And the blind leading the blind is the authors of the Bible and the authors of every culture that you have. Every culture out there, but universal pinpoint and moral precision, which only I'm living in. Okay, leading you people. The blind lead the blind. They both fall into a pit. In the world, they keep digging it deeper. It's a pit that they keep digging deeper. That's why they're deporting you, because they're sexual sadists. Because they want to look superior to everyone, especially more romantically appealing. Because a default part of their construct is causing people to suffer. So everybody, especially the rich, should stop reproducing. Is it likely that if this message got out that poor people would disproportionately stop reproducing? Yes. But the racial war, if you will, the struggle between good and evil after my flesh dies will officially be over. What does it profit a people to inhabit the world and have all of them not have their souls? What does it benefit someone? What does it profit someone to gain the world and lose their souls? To colonize the world, you trying to follow in the white man's footsteps? Everybody should stop reproducing, and they should pass the plans that I talk about. The light at the end of the tunnel is a fire, is an eternal fire for eternal punishment. And you are all on the wrong paths. The way is the truth and the life. If you want someone to lie to you and tell you what you want to hear, so you can make the biggest mistakes in human history, then you shouldn't watch my videos. If you want to know what is actually happening and what God expects, then you should watch my videos.